everyone, my name is Kayla and welcome back to Kay's Hidden Shelf where we talk about books. Today we are going to check in with what I read in the past week, or rather last few weeks, as I've missed a couple of these wrap-ups. Life happened and I do apologize, but I want to go ahead and talk about everything that I've read in the last little bit. First up is a novella that I read for SFINCS called Dragon Meat by Angela Board. Now this is a somber tale of a young woman who is struggling to survive in a starving city, and events and how the story proceeded definitely surprised me. The first thing that drew me into this was the main character named Perry. While she is trying to feed herself and her father in these starving conditions, she inadvertently causes a riot. A stranger saves her from the riot, and somehow he has food, although he's willing to share his secret with her for a price. One of the reasons why I loved Perry's character and why I was so impressed with the author's writing was because Perry is resilient, she's determined, but the author didn't shy away from exploring the vulnerabilities lurking beneath those strengths. This also felt like a nice balance between character and plot-driven storytelling by mixing dire circumstances with satisfying character arcs. The pacing was also spot on as reveals, developments, and circumstances all come into play, and really nice pacing throughout the story. It's also 164 pages. It's an immersive and fast-paced novella that is action-packed, has high stakes, and intrigue. By the time that I was done reading this, I wanted more. I am so curious about the world, and while I am curious about the characters, and I know that this is a prequel novella set hundreds of years prior to in the series, I want more. I want to know more about the world, the characters, and I have slotted Fortune's Fool on my TBR as a result of reading this novella. So if you are looking for a novella that's fast-paced, action-packed, has dragons and fantastical elements, but isn't afraid to dive into some darker topics, this might be one for you to check out. After that, I ended up trying something new based on a recommendation. Now, this was an event I was taking part in over at the Keymark Discord, where individuals get paired up with each other as book buddies and give each other a book recommendation based off of a mutually loved book. In my case, my buddy and I ended up loving Legends and Lattes, and so we swapped cozy found family reads. So I ended up reading Witch Hat Atelier Volume 1. This is a manga, and I have not read manga in a long time. I used to read a lot of it back when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, and it just kind of petered out after that. I stopped reading it, and I don't really know why. Manga and comics are just things that I never attributed towards reading back then. It was just a way of relaxing, kicking back, and enjoying a story. It was never in my mind, anyway, the same caliber as a novel, as novels back then were quite intimidating to me and always felt like they were out of my reach. I struggled to finish them, and I just had a really hard time with my reading in terms of novels at that point. So manga was where I ended up finding a home for a period of my reading journey, and it was kind of interesting to come back to a manga after all this time. In terms of this manga, artistically, it is beautiful. The artwork inside, the imagery, all stunning. I absolutely love that part. In terms of the story and the characters, it was a bit too much on the light and fluffy side for me. A big part of this is the events and circumstances happened so quickly within this story that the characters' reactions, everything else that followed was just unbelievable at that point. And while it is a cozy setting and it has that found family, or at least the start of it in this volume, it just didn't feel earned, and it just felt a little too underdeveloped for my liking. I also realized that this is a series. There are more volumes after this, and I imagine it will continue to develop as the story goes, but it just felt like the beginning of it, the kick of it, was done in a rush. In terms of whether or not I will continue with this series, I'm undecided. It's kind of a mixed bag. It's nice to fit those lighter reads in between my other ones, But I also have so many books on my TBR that those couple of hours could be spent by reading other novels that I'm more invested and interested in. So if you have read this, please leave your feedback down in the comments below. I would love some insight on whether or not I should continue this. After that, I finished The Blue Flames. I think I devoured the second half of this in just a day or two, and it's a chunker at over 680 pages. This is book 3 in the Riverfall Chronicles series, and it was quite the read. It begins with a slow burn in the first half and goes into a wild roller coaster in the second half. With this being book 3, Jacqueline Hagan dives deeper into characters, lore, and plot, and because the cast of the colonists are now separated in this one, it is very different. I really enjoyed following the colonists because we also get new POVs as well. We follow these colonists without their main support system that they've had for years, which is each other. They are now divided, and seeing them survive and going through these circumstances without that support system was really captivating for me. The other aspect I really enjoyed is because of those new POVs, we get some new insights into the growing plot that these colonists have faced. Another aspect that the author explores in this is the relationships of the characters. They are tested, and there is a romantic subplot in this. And while that wasn't to my cup of tea, romance is generally hit or miss. I can never predict if it's going to work for me or not at this point. It felt earned and well executed. And while it wasn't my cup of tea, I can certainly appreciate how the author navigated the entire circumstance around that subplot. Another reason why I love this series is the various themes that are explored throughout it, from judgment of others, conspiracy, superiority, racism, and the meaning of being a good person, and much more. It's clear that there is a lot of thought and care put into this book, not only from the plotting and foreshadowing, but navigating those themes as well as the character arcs. There is so much passion put into this, time, care, all of it. It's just really well thought through. I also read this with the audiobook, and Wayne Farrell as the narrator did a fantastic job with book 3, just as he did with his performances in book 1 and 2. And before I forget, I wanted to mention that I think this series is also great for readers who are in it for the long run. This is a series that is taking its time with developing the plots, giving reveals, and getting some of those satisfying payoffs. So if you are a bit more of a reader who likes the epic nature of fantasy of stories and getting those payoffs earlier on rather than 3 books in and chunkers, you might not be as interested in this. However, I do fully think it is worth your time. I just also think it is going to be a read for the long game, and I am fully invested. And finally, I continued with The Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark. I'm taking my time with this, although that may change now. The last 3 or 4 chapters that I read before putting a pause on it at around 50% were intense. So much so that I am planning to prioritize this for the coming week. While I had an idea of what to expect once I was about a quarter in, getting to that 50% mark kind of spun that on its heels for me. I was not anticipating some of the events that happened, or at least how they happened, and it definitely seems like it's going to be picking up in intrigue, political stress, and tensions, and a whole host of other things. So yes, I am looking forward to continuing it this week, and then I will likely be diving into book 2 right after. And that is everything I read in the last few weeks. I would love to know though, what have you been reading? Did you pick up a new favorite? Did something not quite work for you? Leave your comments down below. I always love hearing from you. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourselves.